What is going on, guys? This is Justin back here with another video, and today we are doing another Frightful Friday review, and today we are reviewing It 2017. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Alright, you guys, so starting off, I'm going to give my score and then a little review of the movie. So first off, my score is going to be a 10 out of 10, and my review is, in It, we follow the young group of kids known as the Losers Club in their fight against the real-life troubles and their personal struggles as well. This is a great movie that takes you right back to the 80s, and it also teaches you the meaning of friendship. It has amazing scares. It really knows how to keep you on the edge of your seat. Now, me personally, this is one of my favorite movies ever. First off, it's one of the movies that got me into horror movies. So without it, there probably wouldn't be any of this. So yeah. And this movie, like I said, knows how to keep you on the edge of your seat. We got great acting by Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, and great acting from the kids as well. And yeah, let's just get right into this review, huh? So, the movie starts out with Billy and Georgie in a room. Billy is making Georgie a boat because Georgie wants to go outside and play. And Georgie's basically like, why won't you come outside and play with me? Like, we're brothers. And Billy's sick, talking about how he vomited in the toilet earlier. Well, Bill asked Georgie, he's like, alright, you want me to make it this boat? Run downstairs, give me some wax so that I can help you out, like, so this thing can float. And Georgie, I believe he calls the boat he, and Billy says no. A boat is always called she, which I didn't know that. I thought that was kind of interesting, but that will also play a part later in the movie. So what happens is, after that, Georgie runs down into the basement, and he sees, it's dark and the light doesn't work. We get a shot of the mom playing the piano, some weird song, I'm not too sure what it is. But Georgie runs downstairs, he grabs a flashlight, he's shining it, and he lands on this little, like, two little, I don't even know what you would call it. It's like a light reflecting off of a light bulb, and it looks like two little beady eyes. So he gets scared and he shines the light on it, and it's just two light bulbs. So continuing on, he goes back upstairs, and all in all, he gets the boat waxed, right? So we go outside with him, and he's running, playing in the rain. He smacks his head on this wooden caution thing, and after he smacks his head, his boat goes away on the stream, right? So we continue on, and his boat eventually goes down the drain, where we get the most iconic scene ever. And this movie really had a lot of balls for doing this. We get the Pennywise and Georgie scene, and this scene is so iconic. It is going to be around for movie history for God knows how long. But, we get the interaction. My name's Pennywise, you're Georgie. Storm blew me away, blew the circus away. You like popcorn, I like popcorn. And eventually it ends off with Pennywise saying to Georgie, well, you better take this boat back because you said Bill's going to kill you, right? And Georgie sits there and he thinks, he's like, oh, crap. Well, yeah, he might be mad at me. I mean, we spent a long time making this. So, after that, Georgie reaches his arm down into the sewer. Bad mistake. I mean, I know he's a little kid and all, but if I see somebody's eyes change colors from blue to yellow, I'm getting out of there. But, unfortunately, Georgie doesn't. Arm gets ripped off and he gets dragged down into the sewer. After that, we get the title card. It is actually a very cool one. We are going through, like, under a bridge, and then it, like, spins around, and then we get shown the It title card, which is actually pretty cool. We are then introduced to Mike Hanlon. He is in his grandfather's farm, where he is getting taught to kill animals, sheeps, the basic stuff us humans eat as meat. Basically meat market food. And he's getting taught to kill them, but he hesitates. His grandpa takes the gun, kills the sheep for him, and he tells them, you could be out here like us, or you could be in there like them. You won't know it until a bullet is between your eyes. And he tries giving them a lecture, saying, well, when your dad was little, and Mike gets all pissy, and he's like, well, you know what, I'm not my dad. So, after that, we are then introduced to some of the main characters of the movie. Not saying Mike's not a main character, obviously he is. But we are introduced to the Losers Club. Richie, Billy, Eddie, and Stan. And they're talking about Stan's, I think it's a bar mitzvah or something that's happening at church. And so they're getting out of school for the summer. And, you know, they're doing the whole thing where they're out of school, they're dumping their books out and everything. Then we are introduced to Beverly Marsh, and she is bullied because her dad is a nasty guy, and there's rumors that she sleeps with all the boys at school, so all the girls are mad at her. So they go in the bathroom, they fill up a garbage can, which is disgusting, fill it up with water and dump it on her head. So after that, the Losers Club sees this mom standing outside of the school, right? They're standing outside of the school. And this mom is the mother of this little girl named Betty Ripsom. And she's been missing for a while. Little did we know, she's one of Pennywise's victims. So after that, they start talking about it. And they're dumping their books in the trash. And all of a sudden, we get introduced to the Bowers gang. And the Bowers gang goes after Bill's crew, which is the Losers Club. And they're basically telling them like they're going to have a summer of pain, this and that. And after that, we finally meet Ben Hanscom. So all in all, now we've met all the kids. And Ben is walking out with Beverly. He's holding his project, trying to, ride home on his bike, holding that project. And it's just not looking good for him. Well, he runs into Beverly, and Beverly, she signs his yearbook, which is actually meaningful to him because nobody has signed it, and he's a new kid, and he was gonna say, like, people call me the fat kid, but she says new kid. She's trying to make it so he doesn't feel bad. So yeah, which is great. So we then go back to Billy, where he is trying to work on his stutter. He is also walking home. He's walking his bike home, and he's trying to work on his stutter by saying he thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. He then gets home, and he finds his dad waiting for him in the garage. And we find out that Bill has been taking his hamsters tunnels, and he's been making a diorama of the sewers. And, he's trying to find out where Georgie would have landed by going down in the sewers, because they don't know he was attacked by Pennywise. They are just, they're just suspecting that he was dragged down the sewer in a bad rainstorm. So, that's hence the whole reason why Billy is making the sewer diorama. And his dad gets mad about it. He starts yelling. And he's like, take this down before your mother sees it. And if you want to borrow something from my office again, he's talking about a map. He goes, you better ask. So after that, we go back to Mike, who is dropping off meat. And he encounters one of Pennywise's forms as the entity on a chain with lambs around him. And, it's very weird. Like, you can hear people screaming like, Mike! And we don't get to see Pennywise, but we know it's Pennywise because we see the outline of him, and his eyes are glowing yellow, and he's hanging off of like this chain thing. And after he's done getting scared by that, he then gets almost ran over by the Bowers gang. And Henry Bowers takes his cigarette, he flicks it at him, and he says, get the fuck out of my town. So yeah, not a very nice guy. We then go to Stanley, that is at, I believe it's, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's a Jewish temple. He's reading, basically the Bible. I'm not too sure what the Jewish people call it. Sorry. No offense. But, he has to read this for his upcoming thing. Like I said, I think it's his bar mitzvah. After he's done, he puts the book back, and we find out that Stanley has a fear of this painting in his dad's office. And he walks by, he's like this, so he can't see it. And he's looking around, and he looks back, and the painting is gone. Well, actually, he picks the painting up, and he sees the painting's gone. So he hangs it up, and he looks around, and this painting is right behind him, and it chases him out. And this painting is ugly, like it's scary looking. So I don't blame him. We then go back and we follow Bill, Eddie, and Richie where they're packing up to go to the sewers. Eddie's mom warns them of rolling in freshly cut grass. Then we go to the library where we follow Ben, who is the historian of the story. And the librarian says to him, summer should be spent with friends. Don't you have any? Ben then reads through the history diary book and sees that tons of kids were murdered on Easter in the 50s, which, if you look in the background on this part, you can see when he finds that headless boy, that the old lady in the background, she's got a great big grin on her face, and that is rumored to be Pennywise. So yeah, after that, we see a balloon that Ben decides to follow. And he follows it back, which leads him to a smoking egg. And the smoking egg has a trail of smoking eggs, and it leads him to the back of the library where he encounters the headless boy that he's seen in the story. Well, not in the story, but in the history book. And the headless boy starts to chase him. And he's running through and turns around and he bumps into Pennywise, and Pennywise says, Egg Boy. So then he starts running, and he runs into the librarian, and the librarian's like, well, what the hell are you doing back here? So, continuing on, Ben then runs out of the library, and he sadly encounters Henry Bowers. Well, Henry Bowers jumps him with the Bowers gang, and they press him up against this bridge, and this car drives by, and Ben yells for help, but of course, a little red balloon pops up in the back of that car. So after that, Henry Bowers punches Ben in the face and he starts carving his name into his stomach. Well, after that, Ben gets away from them. He basically kicks Henry Bowers in the balls and jumps over the railing that he's on. And, oh my god, that part is insane. Alright, continuing on. Ben leads the Bowers gang on a wild goose chase basically around in the sewers. We then switch to Eddie, Bill, Stanley, and Richie, who are exploring the sewer. Billy then finds Betty Ripsom's shoe. And as we know, Betty Ripsom is the girl that is missing. And Richie makes a joke about Betty, saying like, oh, you know, we think we're bad. Betty's hopping around here with one shoe. So, Eddie gets worried about what his mom would think. Then Bill says if he was Betty or Georgie, he would want them to find him too. Ben then encounters them, he falls down, and finally, we have the newest member of the Losers Club. Now, we are at one of my favorite scenes. Patrick Hockstetter, he's going into the sewer. He's the guy with the hairspray and the lighter, and he's like, I'm going to make it like Michael Jackson. And he's looking for Ben. And, you know, he's saying like, I'm going to burn your tits off, stuff like that. And then, this part is creepy. All he finds are a bunch of dead kids Pennywise killed. He then tries to get out of the sewers, where he finds he's locked in. A balloon comes up, and it turns around for a good minute, and it stays there for like maybe a second or two, and then this is one of the best jump scares in the movie. It pops, then we get a bloody Pennywise, and he charges at him. So, after that, we are at the scene where the Losers Club then takes Ben to the pharmacy to fix him up. We then find out that Bev is there, and so is her bully that dumped the trash on her. So she tries to watch out for her, and she ends up going in the same aisle as Bill, Eddie, and Stanley. And she asks them what's going on, and, you know, Stanley says there's a kid out there. Looks like he just got murdered, so we're trying to help him. So what they do is she basically helps them steal the stuff. She goes up and distracts the pharmacist, which is her bully's father. And she says, oh, look at your glasses, you look like Clark Kent. So obviously this guy, he's a nasty guy. Most of the adults in this movie are disgusting. You know, you could tell. And he's like, oh, well, let's put him on you. And he says that she looks like Lois Lane. And she hands him back his glasses, but she knocks down a thing of, I think it's cigarettes, maybe? But, you know, after that, she turns around, looks at the Losers Club, and they dart out the door. So, which is actually a funny scene, because they're trying to get their stuff, and they all bump into the aisle. It's just funny. But, after that, we transition into, well, we don't transition. We go back to the alley, where they are trying to fix up Ben, and Bev comes back, and she sees Ben. She's like, "Oh, that's Ben from social class." So she starts talking to him, asking him if he's okay. They get him patched up, and if you look in the background of this scene, you can see Pennywise is looking right at them. He is basically a part of the graffiti on the wall, which I thought was a cool touch. After that, we then follow Bev home, where she's very careful about going inside her house because she has tampons and her dad is a creep and catches her, and he sniffs her hair, which is very weird. And they ask her, "Are you still my little girl?" Bev then says yes, and we fast forward later into the night. She goes into the bathroom and she starts cutting her hair off, and she says, "This is what you did." So we go to the next day where they are at the quarry, and the scene at the pharmacy, Bev was invited to the quarry by Bill. So the boys are having a loogie contest, seeing who's got the biggest loogies, right? And after that, they're debating on who should jump off. Well, after that, Bev walks up. She says, "I'll go first." And Richie starts freaking out. He's like, "We just got showed up by a girl." And, I thought this scene was kind of fun. They have a fun moment where all the kids are playing in the water. And then they find a turtle, which is a nod to one of Pennywise's enemies. And then we go back to the boys staring at Bev. Bev is drying off, and they're all just sitting there staring at her because obviously they've never seen anything like that before. And after that, we find out that Richie is digging through Ben's bag, and he finds this postcard that Ben was writing to Bev at the library. And Ben quickly puts that away, but he starts telling him about the history of Derry and how every 27 years, tons of kids go missing. We then transition to a pole that has a missing poster for the kid that went down in the sewers acting like he was Michael Jackson, Patrick Hockstetter. We go to Ben's house where he tells us more about the kids that went missing in the 50s. We then follow Eddie just by himself, and his pill timer goes off, which I think you know where I'm going with this scene. Pill timer goes off, and he is stopped by the house on Newbold Street. If you don't know where the house on Newbold Street is, it is the house where this guy lives. So he is fumbling around with his pills because he's heard bad rumors about this house, and eventually he ends up dropping his pills basically. So this leper comes up to him. He's like, "Oh, can you help me, Eddie?" And saying like, "Well, these help me." And honestly, I'd be scared too. He runs off, and this thing chases him into the backyard where Pennywise is there. He's holding this triangular balloon thing, and he says, "Eddie, if you lived here, you'd be home by now. Come join the clown, yes? You'll float down here. We all float down here." And then he does this creepy ass laugh, and then he disappears. So after that, we then follow Bev home, where she is reading the postcard from Ben, and she hears voices in the sink. And she asks who it is, and they respond, "Veronica, Betty Ripsom, and Patrick Hockstetter." She then puts a measuring tape down the sink and pulls it up. And this measuring tape has a whole bunch of nasty ass hair on it. Obviously it's her hair that she cut off. And the hair starts like wrapping around her and attacking her, and it pulls her down to the sink where she gets covered with blood. Then her dad walks in. And she's sitting there screaming, saying, "Look at all the blood, look at all the blood." And he's like, "I don't see any blood, like, what's going on here?" And we then find out that only the kids can see this stuff because the parents aren't afraid. Well, the only thing he asks her in this scene, even though she's covered in blood, but he doesn't see her covered in blood, he says, "What'd you do to your hair? Makes you look like a boy." Which obviously we know he doesn't like that. He likes smelling her hair. So after that, we then go back to Bill, where he's sleeping in bed, and we see he drew a portrait of Beverly. And it's getting wet from a leaky ceiling that eventually wakes Bill up. And Bill goes into Georgie's room, where he sees a character that looks just like Georgie. Like, not just like Georgie, but it's like his shadow figure or whatever. And he starts to follow it. He's holding this Lego turtle. And he goes downstairs, and eventually Georgie runs past him, and he hears his walkie-talkie go off, and he drops the turtle. Well, he follows him downstairs, and downstairs, Georgie's standing there. And he says, "I lost it, Billy. Don't be mad, it just floated off. But if you come with me," and then after he says, "if you come with me," he starts shouting, "You'll float too," obviously. And then we then see this was just a puppet of Georgie that Pennywise was using to lure Billy downstairs. Pennywise then tries to attack Billy, but he misses and he sinks back into the water. So yeah. Continuing on, we then go back to Bev's house where we see she invited the boys over to look in the bathroom. So she knows she's not crazy. Then we have blood cleaning montage, which is actually pretty funny. You know, all the kids are cleaning up some blood. And we see Billy and Bev talking about the summer affair. Then she says what they say about her isn't true. She's not like that at all. She's only ever kissed one guy, and that was Bill. It was back on a play when they were little. She then brings up the poem from the postcard, and Bill knows nothing because he didn't write it. But Ben overhears her talking about it, and he stops and he smiles. He's like, "Oh, well, she did get it, but she doesn't think it's from me," what sucks. Richie cracks a joke about what they were doing because Richie had to stay behind and wait and see if the dad was coming back or not because the dad doesn't like Beverly around boys. But Richie cracks a joke saying that Bev's bathroom went Eddie's mom's vagina on Halloween. Bill then says he's seen Georgie, and all the other kids admit to seeing something scary. We then find out that the Bowers gang have taken Mike and they are beating him up. And it's like in this, I want to say cornfield because it looks like corn, but it's not because there's stones everywhere. And they're pushing Mike's face down in the meat. And all of a sudden we see this creepy ass version of Pennywise, basically, where he's got Georgie's severed arm and he shakes it at him and he's eating it. And oh my god, it's insane. After that, the Losers Clubs come down, they find Mike, and they help him out. They have a rock war, and they eventually win. They beat the Bowers gang, and it ends with Richie yelling to Henry Bowers, "Go blow your dad, you mullet-wearing asshole." So after that, Mike then joins the Losers Club, and we finally have a full Losers Club. We then flash to the Dairy Fair, where we see the kids looking at all the missing kids posters, and Ben says he noticed that it happens every 27 years. The kids admit to seeing Pennywise, and Stanley says he sees a scary lady, which Richie responds with, "Is she hot?" And Stanley yells, No, she's not hot." Then Mike tells us that he keeps seeing his family who died in a fire, and you know, he's saying he was just a little kid when it happened, but that's all that's like his biggest fear because his mom and his dad died in there. So Richie tells us that he is scared of clowns. We then move on to Bill's home, where they're setting up this map in his garage, and they were trying to find Pennywise. And all of a sudden, it stops going from maps to family pictures. And it's Georgie and Bill's mom. And Bill's mom's hair starts blowing in the picture. And it keeps blowing, and eventually it turns into Pennywise. And the kids freak out. Then we get a jump scare. Pennywise has a wide grin and sharp-ass teeth. And fun fact, this is actually the first time that the kids seen Pennywise on set in the movie. They waited to get their honest reaction so that they could really be scared, which I thought was really cool. So their reactions were genuine, which is awesome. So Bill then says, "We know where it is, let's go kill it." And he gives a speech without stuttering. Bill, Eddie, and Richie enter the house on Neibolt Street, right? So Richie starts freaking out because he finds a missing poster with his face on it. They then calm Richie down, and they hear Betty rips him, screaming. They all go upstairs, but Eddie gets separated, and he looks for his inhaler. He starts screaming, "Guys!" But the leper finds him and makes him fall through a hole in the floor. Richie is now following around a demonic Eddie that looks like him in a room full of clowns. If you look at the clowns, you could see a tribute to one of Tim Curry's Pennywise from the 1990 miniseries, which is actually very, very cool. Then Richie finds a casket that says "Found You," and he opens it to find a doll of himself covered in maggots. So he shuts the lid, and Pennywise pops up and says, "Beep beep Richie," and he chases him. The demonic Eddie comes back. He is inside a mattress, and he's doing like this. He says, "Do you want to play loogie?" And all this black stuff comes out of his mouth. So he's messing with Bill and Richie, while the real Eddie is getting preyed on by Pennywise. We then flash back to Bill and Richie, who had 3 doors to choose from: scary, not scary at all, and very scary. And they chose not scary at all, to which they open and they find Betty Ripsom's torso. They then run into the same room as Pennywise, where Pennywise turns around and says to Bill, "This isn't real enough for you, Billy. I'm not real enough for you. It was real enough for Georgie." And after that, all hell breaks loose. Pennywise attacks the kids, and Bev puts a big old pole right through his eyes, which this part is very, very cool. He has like this wolf hand that happens, and he's got this big old creepy grin that he's growing, and he basically attacks the kid. Well, he doesn't attack the kids, but he cuts Ben open. Then he goes back down into the sewer, and the kids go outside because Eddie now has a broken arm because of falling through the thing. So we go outside, and Eddie's mom is there, and she's freaking out, and she takes Eddie to the hospital. She basically tells all the kids, "Stay away from my kid. Like, I don't want you guys around him anymore." And Bill and Richie get into it. Richie said, "Georgie's dead, and he's not coming back. I don't want to end up like that." And Bill gets offended, and he punches Richie. We then get a montage of the kids, and see a painting of a woman holding a baby, which was actually a deleted scene of the movie. It was supposed to be this lady. She had to give up her baby to Pennywise in order to save her other kids. So, yeah. We then go to Henry's dad. Henry's dad is a police officer, and he comes out and he yells at Henry, and because he told Henry to clean his gun, and he found Henry was trying to shoot a cat. So after that, he takes the gun and he shoots at the ground, and he says to Henry's friends, because obviously Henry's very scared, he's like cowering now, and he says to Henry's friend, he goes, "Look at that. Doesn't take much to see a paper man crumble." And after that, we go into the pharmacy where Eddie's there, and he's getting these pills, right? And the girl tells him, she's like, "You know, you don't even actually need those. Those are just gazebos." So continuing on, we go back to Henry's house, and we find out that Henry has killed his dad, and he is now under the control of Pennywise, who appears on a kid's TV show and tells Henry to kill them all. And also another fun fact, all of the parents in this movie, if you keep an eye out on their TVs, they are all watching the same kids show, which is very interesting. We now move on to Bed, whose creep dad is acting weird towards her and says he worries about her. People in town have been telling her that she's sneaking around with boys, and that then he asks her if she's doing womanly things. He then asks Bev about Ben's poem and asks if he's still his girl, which she responds with no. Then he tries to get on top of her, and she kicks him in the nuts. She locks herself in the bathroom, and the dad eventually busts into the bathroom, and she hits him with the top of the toilet lid, I believe. So she thinks she's good. She turns around, and boom, there's Pennywise to kidnap her. Bill then goes over to Bev's house, trying to find Bev, because, you know, he's trying to get the group back together so they can go fight Pennywise. And he then sees on the ceiling in blood, it says, "You'll die if you try." So Bill then runs, and he goes to Richie, who's at an arcade, who's playing Mortal Kombat, and he says, "You see that guy right there that I'm punching? I'm imagining that's you." So he then basically gathers up all the kids, telling them that it has Beverly. And we then flash to Eddie, where Eddie gets the call. And Eddie's mom tries to stop him from leaving. And he yells at her. He says that the pills are gazebos, and he throws it on the ground. So then after that, we finally get the scene where all the kids arrive to the house on Nebold Street. And we find out that Henry Bowers is there as well, and that he killed his friends. So after that, we then go to Bev and Pennywise. And Bev gets up, and she sees Pennywise doing this weird-ass dance, right? So, continuing on after that, he jumps off, and he catches her, and she says, "I'm not afraid of you." So then he puts her into his deadlights. So the boys are going down the well, inside of the house on Evil Street, and the last person that's down, the last person to go down is Mike. He's still up there. And we find out that Henry Bowers is up there with him too. Henry Bowers tries to kill Mike, but Mike throws him down the well. So eventually, they all get down the well, and they're in Pennywise's place, basically. And Stanley gets sidetracked, and we then find one of Pennywise's forms sucking on Stan's face. It's the lady from the painting that Stanley hates. Excuse me. The painting lady then goes into the sewer and comes back out as Pennywise. Bill then runs off because he sees Georgie and runs into Beverly. And he leaves Bev and continues on. Well, he says to Bev, like, you know, I'll come back for you. Like, my little brother's down here. I'm going to go get him first. So then the other group of kids run into Beverly. And, you know, they save her. Well, they don't actually save her. Ben saves her with a kiss, which is very weird. Bill then catches up with Georgie, where they have a heartfelt moment. And Georgie says he wants to come home. And he mentions the boat, but he doesn't call the boat she. And Georgie always called the boat she because that's what Bill told her to call it. This is how Bill knows that this isn't Georgie. So he takes Mike's gun and he shoots Georgie in the head. And Georgie then falls down, and for like maybe 5 seconds straight, he lays still and he starts shaking. And eventually we see Georgie transition into a boy Pennywise right here. So after that, Pennywise then gets a hold of Bill. And Bill's telling him to go, leave, just let him take me. And Pennywise is mocking him, making fun of him. And all the kids fight to save Bill. Then we get into the final fight. The final fight is amazing because we get to see all of Pennywise's forms, all the fears that the kids have, all their fears come to life. And then he turns into Bev's dad. And he looks at her and he says, "Are you still my little girl?" She takes a pole and she stabs him in the throat. And then Pennywise stumbles back and falls into a sewer, reciting the poem that Bill said earlier. Like I said, that would come back into play earlier, and it did. So he's sitting there, he's saying, he thrusts his fist against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. But this time, Pennywise is stuttering, and he can't understand why. So the kids are talking to him, and the last word we hear from Pennywise is fear. After Pennywise is defeated, all the kids in the sewers start floating down, and Bill finds Georgie's jacket, and this scene always breaks my heart. He finds Georgie's jacket and they all share a hug. And the movie ends with the kids sitting around the quarry making an oath, a blood oath, that if it isn't dead, they'll come back. And they'll come back to kill it. So yeah, that was my review of It 2017. Very, very long, 6 pages long. But yeah, I love reviewing these movies, and especially It 2017, my favorite movie ever of any genre. I just think this movie has so much packed into it. Like, you got the laughs, you got scariness, you got the meaning of friendship inside of it. You've got so much inside of this movie. It makes it so good. And this is really just a childhood movie for me as well, which is funny saying that. I was like maybe, I want to say 12 when this came out. So yeah, I'm 20 now. So yeah, very, very crazy. But yeah, this movie is amazing. I really, really love it, and my favorite movie ever. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments below. As always, you guys, stay groovy, stay safe, and keep your people safe. Remember, God is good all the time. It has been Justin, and I'm out. Peace.